They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I never thought one photo would shatter 20 years of marriage. My name is Ted. I'm 52. I built a life from scratch, poured sweat and soul into my small business, and did everything I could to be a good husband to my wife, Katie. We married young. She was 27, I was 32. Back then, she was warm, spontaneous, and real. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That was enough. But time changes people. And sometimes, it changes them into someone you no longer recognize. It started subtly. Katie opened an Instagram account. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone's online these days, right? She'd post a photo now and then, usually of her brunches with friends or some throwback shot of our vacations. But slowly, the tone shifted. Then came the birthday party. She turned 47, and her friends threw her a surprise party at a swanky rooftop bar downtown. I showed up with flowers. She showed up with a dress that wasn't her style and an attitude that wasn't hers either. The moment that burned into my memory, she posted a photo of herself on the rooftop, alone, no mention of me, no ring on her finger. The caption read, "Here's to freedom, fun, and finding myself again." I didn't even know what the hell that meant. I just knew it didn't include me. After that birthday post, something inside me couldn't unsee what was happening. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe it was just a caption. Maybe the ring was at the jeweler. Maybe I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. The woman in that photo was posing for someone, just not me. Things began unraveling fast after that. Katie started staying out late. Girls' nights, she said. Spa weekends. She'd come home with expensive perfume on her coat and freshly done nails. Always scrolling through her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't share. Our once familiar routine. Dinner together, long walks with our dog, movie nights on the couch, turned into silence, cold sheets, and empty rooms. I tried talking to her. I really did. One evening, I said, "Katie, is something wrong between us?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm just finding myself," she replied flatly. "I've spent 20 years being someone's wife. I want to know who I am." Those words hit like a freight train. I never stopped her from being anything. I supported her career, encouraged her to take time for herself, cheered her on when she took up painting, photography, yoga, and every other phase she went through. But now, it was like I was the cage she wanted to escape. Then, the strangest thing happened. She started treating me like a burden. She'd roll her eyes when I asked about her day, sigh dramatically when I'd suggest a weekend getaway. And worst of all, she stopped saying goodnight. Not because she forgot, but because she didn't care to. I felt invisible in my own home. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I looked at her Instagram. Her feed was filled with pictures I'd never seen. Rooftop lounges, wine glasses clinking, gym selfies, glamorous filters, hashtags like hashtag freedom, hashtag new vibes, hashtag self-love, and, notably, hashtag no regrets. And there she was, surrounded by new faces. Younger people, mostly women, but one man's name kept popping up in the comments. Jake. His comments? "You're glowing. Damn, Katie. Looking 30. When are we doing that hike again?" That little winking emoji? It was the match. And I could already feel the fire building inside me. I didn't confront her right away. I'm not the kind of man who starts shouting or snooping through drawers. But I'm not stupid either. Something had shifted, and I needed to understand it fully before I said anything. So I did what any rational man with a gut feeling and a quiet house would do. I started observing. Jake wasn't just some random guy from the internet. He was one of her fitness friends from the new gym she'd joined 6 months earlier. You know, one of those fancy lifestyle centers with green smoothies, LED-lit yoga rooms, and empowerment seminars. Katie had begged me to come try it with her once. I passed. Too many mirrors. Too little substance. I looked Jake up. 38. Divorced. A self-described entrepreneur with a personal brand built on shirtless photos, motivational quotes, and fake deep captions like, "If she wants peace, don't give her promises, give her passion." He had that slick, "I sell supplements and sadness" vibe. And there he was, all over Katie's comment section. Always too friendly. Always too familiar. One night, Katie came home late again. Her hair was different, styled like she'd been somewhere special. She kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat across from me on the couch. She scrolled through her phone with a smirk on her face. I watched her thumb linger on Jake's latest photo. I asked, as calmly as I could, "You've been spending a lot of time with that guy, haven't you?" She looked up slowly. "Jake? He's just a friend." "You're being weird, Ted." No denial. No surprise. Just deflection. Does your friend know you're married? And then she said something I'll never forget. Well, it's not like we've been acting married for a while now. That was the moment I knew. She had already checked out. Maybe not legally, not yet, but emotionally? She was gone. And the worst part was, she had started rewriting history in her head. 20 years of love, struggle, and commitment were now just a faded chapter she could skim through and toss aside. She went to bed that night like it was any other. But I sat on the couch for hours, trying to remember the last time she kissed me without obligation. I couldn't. And that silence inside me, it was no longer grief. It was preparation. 2 weeks after that conversation, Katie got invited to another birthday party, this one for one of her new gym friends. It was going to be a wild girls' night, as she put it, complete with a hotel suite, cocktails, and no boring husbands allowed. She laughed when she said it. I didn't. I offered to drive her. She declined. Said she'd Uber. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window like a damn ghost, watching headlights flash across our driveway, waiting for her to come back. She didn't. The next morning, she stumbled in around 10 a.m., sunglasses on, makeup smudged, carrying her heels in her hand like some walk of shame cliché. She didn't offer any explanation, just said, the hotel had a rooftop bar. We stayed longer than planned. But I wasn't stupid. And at this point, I wasn't even hurt anymore. Just numb. Later that day, I checked her Instagram again. There were new stories, clips from the party, Katie dancing, clinking glasses, laughing into the camera. And in one frame, almost too fast to notice, Jake's arm looped around her waist. His hand stayed there a beat too long. My heart didn't drop this time. It hardened. I didn't need more proof. I didn't need to hire a private investigator or dig through her phone. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, complete. She had chosen a different life, and I was no longer part of it. That night, I didn't say anything. I just stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to her breathing beside me, wondering how two people could lie next to each other and be so far apart. And while she slept, dreaming of new beginnings and filtered selfies, I was wide awake, planning my ending. I started by making copies of all our financial documents. Bank accounts, property titles, retirement plans. I spoke to a lawyer the next morning, calmly, like I was ordering lunch. When I told him I wanted to file for divorce, he asked me one question. Are you sure? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I've been married to a ghost for 2 years. I'm ready to live again. And just like that, the countdown began. Filing for divorce didn't feel like revenge. It felt like surgery, necessary, painful, but ultimately life-saving. My lawyer, Brent, was a steady hand. He'd seen it all. When I explained Katie's detachment, the suspicious nights out, and the emotional distance that had replaced our marriage, he didn't flinch. Just nodded, made notes, and said, we'll make this clean. You've put in your time. Brent's team started uncovering things I never thought to check. Turns out, Katie had opened a separate bank account over a year ago. She'd been quietly diverting small amounts of money every month, enough to build a comfortable little escape fund. It wasn't illegal, but it was deceitful. She also had a post office box I didn't know about. She used it for shipping clothing from online boutiques I'd never seen her wear at home. Probably things she wore out with Jake. I confronted her with the documents. Her face didn't fall. It didn't even twitch. I was going to tell you, she said, arms crossed. Tell me what? That you were planning a solo life behind my back. She shrugged. Ted, I just changed. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't want to be stuck anymore. Stuck. 20 years of my life, reduced to a trap in her eyes. I asked her, how long have you been planning this? There was a pause, and then she said it. 2 years, maybe more. I just didn't know how to say it. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I looked at the woman I had built a life with, traveled the world with, sat up late talking with when our son was sick or when business was slow, and I realized she wasn't that woman anymore. She hadn't been for a long time. So I said, you don't have to say anything. The papers are on the kitchen table. And I walked out. I drove to the edge of town, parked near the lake we used to visit when we first started dating, and sat there for hours. Grief came in waves. Then clarity. She had been planning her exit for 2 years. I had 3 months to plan my future, and I'd make sure it counted. Once the divorce papers were signed, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted, but also free. The house, our so-called dream home, suddenly felt like a museum of dead moments. Every room held a memory I no longer wanted. The framed wedding photo in the hallway, the Christmas mugs in the kitchen, The garden bench where we once drank wine and talked about retirement plans that now felt like fiction. So I made the decision. I sold it. Not out of spite. Not to punish Katie. But because I knew I couldn't breathe in those walls anymore. That house was built on promises, and most of them had been broken silently, piece by piece. Katie didn't fight me on it. She was already renting a condo closer to the city and her new life. She even offered to take the dining table. I let her. Let her take the damn table, the fancy wine glasses, the treadmill she never used. Let her surround herself with the illusions of a life she thought she wanted. I kept the dog, Harley, 12 years old, half golden retriever, half mystery, all heart. He stayed by my side the whole time, sensing every emotional tremor like some kind of furry psychic. He was the only one in that house who never lied to me. The day the house sold, I stood in the empty living room and whispered, "Thank you for the memories, and goodbye." I moved into a modest home outside town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a small yard, a porch swing I found at a garage sale. But it was mine. No ghosts. No stage photos. No forced smiles. Just Harley, a stack of books, and quiet. And in that quiet, something strange started to happen. I began to feel like myself again. Not Katie's husband. Not Ted the boring businessman. Just Ted, a man who'd weathered the storm and was finally seeing the sun again. But peace doesn't last long when the past comes knocking. And Katie? She wasn't done knocking yet. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Katie texted me. Out of nowhere. "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" I stared at the screen for a while. Harley curled at my feet, the fireplace humming softly in the background. My first instinct was to ignore her. But curiosity, dangerous, persistent curiosity, won out. I replied, "Call me. Now's fine." She called within seconds. Her voice was different. Softer. No edge. No arrogance. "Ted," she said, almost breathless. "I don't know who else to talk to." I leaned back in my chair and let her speak. Jake had moved on. Apparently, he wasn't as invested in her new life as she thought. Once the fun wore off, once the spotlight dimmed, once she stopped being the shiny new thing in his world of likes and protein shakes, he disappeared. Ghosted her after a minor argument about him flirting with someone at a bar. No explanation. No closure. "It just ended," she said. And then came the words I wasn't expecting. "I made a mistake." Silence. She continued. "I thought I needed something more. Something new. I was chasing this idea of, I don't know, freedom? But it wasn't real. It was all fake. The posts, the people, even Jake." I didn't say a word. Then came the kicker. "Do you ever think about us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What we had. What we lost." I closed my eyes for a long moment. I did think about it, often, but not in the way she hoped. I didn't miss her. I missed who she used to be. The version of Katie that held my hand on cold nights and laughed at my dad jokes. The woman who used to be my best friend before she became a stranger with filters and captions. So I told her the truth. "I think about it, yeah? I think about how hard I tried. I think about how you left without ever walking out the door. And I think about how peaceful my life has been since we stopped pretending." She went quiet. "I'm not angry, Katie, but I'm not coming back." Her silence was louder than any scream. And in that moment, I realized the difference between regret and reconciliation. One is a wound you caused. The other is a life you've earned by walking away. A week after our phone call, Katie showed up at my door. No warning. No text. Just her standing on my front porch in a cream-colored coat, holding a box of old photo albums and what looked like a homemade casserole. Like we were still in 2009, and this was some normal Tuesday night. Harley barked once, then retreated to the living room, sensing the emotional weight in the air. "Hi," she said, trying to smile. "I was driving by. Thought maybe we could talk in person." I didn't move. "You weren't just driving by. You live 30 miles away." She let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, you got me. I've been thinking about everything. About you. About us. And I don't know. I guess I thought maybe we could sit down and remember what made us us." She lifted the box like it was an olive branch. Inside were our wedding photos, anniversary cards, random snapshots from forgotten vacations. I felt nothing. There was a time when that box would have broken me. Would have made me question everything. Would have made me weak. But now, it just looked like evidence from a life we no longer lived. I stepped outside, closing the door halfway behind me. "Katie," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You left long before you ever signed the papers. You made your choices. You found your freedom. I thought it would feel different, she whispered. Me too, I admitted. But sometimes we chase what we think we want, only to find out we already had what we needed and lost it. She stood there, still holding the box. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not really. Do you hate me? She asked. No, I said. I just don't need you anymore. I handed the box back. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, to explain, to rewrite the script. But I turned and walked inside before she could say anything else. I didn't slam the door. I didn't lock it dramatically. I just closed it. And this time, it stayed closed. After that day, Katie never came back. No more texts. No more calls. No surprise visits. I think she finally understood there was nothing left here for her. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself again. It's strange how long it takes to realize you've been walking around carrying someone else's expectations. I wasn't just Katie's husband anymore. I was Ted. Just Ted. And that name started to mean something again. I started small. I took a woodworking class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I reconnected with an old friend, Greg, who'd moved back into town after his own divorce. We grabbed beers, talked like old men do, about knees, cars, and the absurdity of dating apps. Speaking of which, no, I wasn't dating yet. I wasn't interested in swiping or pretending to laugh at forced conversations. I was still healing. But for once, healing didn't feel like a prison. It felt like progress. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter on weekends. Harley got a kick out of it. So many tails wagging, so many new smells. He was thriving too. We both were. The biggest change? I stopped explaining myself. I stopped justifying why I liked silence, or why I didn't want to join group outings, or why I chose to spend Friday nights with a book and a beer on the porch. I was finally living without performance. And here's the thing people don't tell you about starting over in your 50s. It's not too late. It's just quieter, more intentional, more honest. There are no dramatic fireworks or sudden epiphanies. Just peace. A kind of peace that comes when you no longer have to edit your thoughts around someone who stopped listening years ago. And when I looked in the mirror now, I didn't see a man who'd been left. I saw a man who let go. A few months after our final encounter, I heard through a mutual friend that Katie had jumped into another relationship. Fast. Too fast. His name was Brandon, mid-30s, worked in digital marketing, drove a leased Tesla, and thought quoting Gary Vee made him wise. From what I heard, he was the kind of guy who called himself an alpha male and believed love was a transaction. Katie plastered her new life all over social media again. Dinner selfies, couple yoga poses, he gets me captions. I didn't follow her, but the internet has a funny way of delivering what you're not even looking for. A friend accidentally forwarded a post. Another sent me a "can you believe this?" screenshot. But you know what? I didn't feel jealousy. I felt something worse, secondhand embarrassment. She wasn't in love. She was in survival mode, trying to fill a void she carved out herself. It lasted 3 months. Brandon dumped her in the most predictable way possible, ghosted her after she hinted at something long-term. A friend of mine said he saw her at the grocery store a few weeks later. No makeup, hair unwashed, sweatpants and sunglasses indoors. She looked hollow. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel bad either. I felt removed. Like I was watching the final act of a play I walked out on at intermission. She had chased the new, the exciting, the curated version of love. And now she was left with nothing but followers, fake friends, and a feed full of filters. Meanwhile, I was sipping coffee in my backyard, Harley curled at my feet, building a birdhouse from scratch, and listening to the wind move through the trees. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't proving a point. I was simply living. And that, in the end, was the deepest kind of peace. One rainy Sunday, I found an old box in the attic. I had almost forgotten it was there, tucked behind holiday decorations and dusty photo frames. It was full of the kind of things you only keep when you still believe forever means something. Our wedding invitation. A dried flower from our honeymoon in Greece. A postcard she once wrote me when I was away on business. Come home soon. I hate sleeping without you. I sat there on the wooden floor, the sound of rain tapping the roof above me, holding that card like it came from a different universe. A version of us that no longer existed. A version of her that no longer existed. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt still. The past no longer haunted me. It didn't even sting. It was just a chapter, not a prison. I packed everything back into the box, walked downstairs, and placed it gently on the curb with the rest of the week's trash. Not out of bitterness, but because it was time. Time to stop revisiting a story that had already ended. Later that evening, I met Greg for dinner. We laughed over bad wings and worse beer, and I realized how much lighter I felt. No weight in my chest. No hidden grief pressing behind my eyes. Katie used to tell me I was too nostalgic. Maybe she was right. But now I was done looking back. The future didn't need to be thrilling. It just needed to be real. About a year after the divorce, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten, sealed in a pale blue envelope with no return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. Katie's. I thought about tossing it. But curiosity has claws, and mine got the better of me. I opened it slowly. Ted, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, and you have every right to feel that way. But I needed to write this. Not for closure, not to get anything back, but because it's the one thing I never gave you, honesty. I wasn't fair to you. I wasn't kind. I was selfish. I thought I was searching for something bigger than the life we had, but all I really did was run from my own discontent. You were a good man, steady, thoughtful, loyal, and I convinced myself that made you boring. What a stupid, arrogant lie that was. Jake, Brandon, none of them knew me. Not really. They liked the version of me I posted. The one with the filters. But you saw all of me, even the parts one tried to hide. And I didn't appreciate that. I couldn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I hurt you. I just want you to know you didn't fail me. I failed you. Whatever life you're living now, I hope it's peaceful. I hope it's yours. Katie. I folded the letter and sat with it for a long time. The words didn't feel like a plea. They felt like a confession. A quiet admission that the fantasy she chased never measured up to the reality she left. I didn't write back. There was nothing more to say. She had finally told the truth. But I was already too far down a different road to look back. Harley barked outside, chasing a squirrel, snapping me out of the moment. I smiled, tore the letter in half, and tossed it into the fire. The past had spoken, and now it was ash. After the letter, something settled inside me. Like an old wound finally closed, not with anger, but with finality. I wasn't the man I had been 2 years ago. Divorce had carved something out of me, yes, but it also gave me room to rebuild. I leaned into the stillness of my new life. Each morning, I woke early, not out of obligation, but choice. I'd pour coffee, sit on the porch with Harley, and listen to the world before it got too loud. There was no rush, no performance, no curated timeline. Just breath, just time. I started building furniture on weekends. A bench for the porch, a bookshelf for the local library. It's funny how working with your hands can stitch things together inside you too. One afternoon, I donated the last suit I wore during our court hearings. I hadn't touched it in months, and I never wanted to wear it again. I replaced it with hiking boots and a weathered flannel that actually made me feel human. I even went on a date. Her name was Rachel. We met at the shelter. She volunteered with the cats. Soft-spoken, curious, warm. We didn't talk about pasts, not at first. We talked about music, books, dogs, and bad coffee. And when she laughed, it didn't sound rehearsed, it sounded earned. We weren't rushing. No declarations. No fireworks. Just slow companionship, like two people sharing the same park bench under a cloudy sky, content with the view. And that's when I realized, the best things in life aren't the ones that scream at you with excitement. They're the quiet ones that whisper, "You're safe now." Katie had chased something louder. I had finally found something real. It's been 2 years since the divorce. I'm 54 now. I've got a few more wrinkles, a few more gray hairs, and a hell of a lot more peace. Looking back, I don't hate Katie. I don't even resent her anymore. She was chasing something she thought would fix the void inside her. Social media sold her a fantasy, freedom, attention, validation. But it never taught her what real love looks like when it isn't being photographed. It never showed her that joy doesn't come from applause. It comes from quiet mornings and small moments and someone who keeps showing up. The truth? She didn't ruin me. She released me. She let go of a man who would have spent the rest of his life loving her. And in doing so, she gave me the chance to finally love myself. The moral? Don't wait for someone to validate your worth. Don't shrink yourself to fit into the image someone else wants. And never confuse being wanted with being valued. Sometimes, losing everything you thought you needed is the only way to discover what you truly deserve. I don't live in the past anymore. I don't refresh feeds or wonder who's watching. I sit on my porch. I throw a tennis ball for Harley. I build things with my hands. And sometimes, just sometimes, I sit beside someone who listens when I speak and laughs when I don't and makes life feel like home. And that, my friends, is the kind of story I never saw coming. But I'm glad I lived to tell it. If this story hit you in the heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means the world and helps us keep telling stories that matter.